Hey, this is Deepak here, and welcome to day 3 of your 100-day blogging course. In today's lesson, we are going to talk about how to choose the right domain name for your blog. So first, let us talk about why domain names are required in the first place. So whenever you type in a domain name, the browser is actually loading the website from a server. The server has an IP address. Each and every server has an IP address. If you move your website from one server to another server, then the IP address also changes. So the users who browse your website can't remember the IP address every time, right? So they can remember only the domain names, and that makes browsing on the web much easier. To give you an example, if you have your phone with you, the phone numbers of your friends are like the IP addresses. A phone number of your friend could change, but his name does not change. His name on the phone book does not change. So it's very similar. So if one of your friend updates his phone number or changes his phone number, you don't change his name on the phone, you just update his phone number to the new one. You might not even remember what the previous phone number was and what the new number is, but you just call him by clicking on the name. So domain names are like that. So even if the server IP changes, the domain name doesn't change, and then people will be able to load your website on the browser very easily. So I would say that DNS is the internet phone book. Each and every website has an IP address which changes from time to time. So let's say you have your website in a specific IP address. So whenever someone searches for a domain name, the domain name or the DNS record has this IP address on file, and the browser will load the files from this server to the website browser. But however, if your IP address changes, then you just need to update your domain name with a new IP address, and then the website will load from the new server. So each and every domain name has something called domain name records where these details are stored. So domain name records are usually held at the domain registrar or the name server, which I will explain better in the future videos. So there is something called A record. A record will point to the server IP address. MX record will point to the mail server IP address. Like for example, if you have a Google Apps account, then there are separate MX records for Google Apps. And then you have something called TXT records, which are used for domain verifications. So now let's talk about why domain names are so important. So if you are building a strong brand which needs to have a good recall and good association, then you need a good domain name on it. We already spoke about branding in the last video, which was day 2, and domain name is the brand name when it comes to online businesses. So if you don't have an offline business, and if your entire business is online, and when it comes to blogging, obviously the entire business is online, the domain name itself becomes the brand name. Like for example, Digital Deepak is the brand name, but many times Digital Deepak is referred to as digitaldeepak.com as the brand name itself. So that's why domain names are so important. A good business which is built on a bad domain name will suffer. So if you are going to invest a lot of time and energy in building your business, and if you are doing it in a bad domain name, then it will suffer, and it's not easy to change the domain names in the future. Moving all the websites and making sure the search engines are recognizing the change is very difficult. So domain names are like virtual real estate. Whenever you buy a domain name, the value is held inside the domain name. It will always have a resale value. So whenever I purchase domain names for my business, I don't treat it as an expense. I treat it as an investment. So let's talk about some basic rules of good domain names. A good domain name should not be more than 2 to 3 words. For example, Digital Deepak is 2 words. There are big brands which are built on 3 words as well. For example, when you look at thelogicalindian.com, it's a 3-word website, but usually you don't see any big brands who have built it on 4 words. So there is something called the phone test, which I always recommend doing when you are registering a domain name. If you tell the domain name to someone on the phone, they should not ask you to spell it out, or they should not ask you for clarifications on the domain name. They should just be able to go ahead and type it on their browser and open the website. So if I say digitaldeepak.com on the phone to someone, then there is a very good chance that they will not ask for the spelling again. .com is always preferred because of the branding power of .com as a TLD. More than 50% of the websites in the world are built on .com, and it has been the first ever TLD which was released. And ideally, I also recommend the domain name should be 12 characters or less. Geographic TLDs are okay for country specific niches. So if you are building a website which is just going to be for India and never for outside India, it's okay to have a .in domain name. But at the same time, if someone else has a website at the .com version, over time, if you are building a very good brand, then what happens is that people might end up visiting the .com version and you may lose some of the traffic to them. And it's not good, especially if you are competing in the same industry. Most of the very big websites in India usually have a .com version also, even if they have built the website on .in. You have to be a bit careful when you are having geographical TLDs. So TLDs basically means top level domain name, which is basically the extension that comes after the dot. So .net is a TLD, .com is a TLD, .site is a TLD, and things like that. So some GTLDs do not have value in the market. For example, there is a domain extension called .pro, but there is not enough value in the market for .pro. So where do you want to register your domain name? So I recommend that you can register your domain name at GoDaddy, because GoDaddy gives you the best offers for the first year. But GoDaddy is not really reliable to hold high value domain names for the long term because of poor customer support. Sometimes there has been stories of people losing their domain names or not able to access their domain names because of some error in their system. So go ahead and register your new name at GoDaddy. If you click the banner below this video, you will be able to get an offer. Sometimes you will be able to register it for as low as $1 or as low as 100 rupees, which is not available if you visit GoDaddy directly. So go ahead and register it for the first year, but you can move it to some other registrar after the first year. So there is something called domain name portability, just like phone number portability that we have, and you will be able to move the domain to another registrar. So I use name.com and namecheap.com alternatively. Both are very good high quality domain name registrars, and the renewal costs are the same. So for the second year, you will be able to shift your domain name to one of these domain registrars. So let's talk a little bit about Whois database and Whois privacy. So there is something called Whois database. So there is no expansion for Whois, it just means who is. And this database contains the contact details of each and every domain owner. So you can check the ownership of any domain name at whois.com or any other query tool. There are many other query tools on the web. And there is an option to hide these details for a cost. So if you don't mind the extra cost paying for Whois privacy, you can go ahead and buy it. So basically the domain name registrar will put their own contact details for you instead of you, so that if someone looks up your domain name or website on the Whois database, they will not have your email ID, phone number and address. So generally email ID, phone number and address are displayed in the Whois database. And if you don't want to buy the Whois database, you can still give an unused email ID and a phone number that you do not use frequently, and you can put a forwarding mail address or some office address there, so that your privacy and your home address or your personal phone number is not revealed. And one more thing, .in domain names can't be protected. This is because of the rules in India. So .in domain names are controlled by the Indian head registrar, so they don't allow Whois privacy. So in that case, you might want to just don't give completely fake addresses, but just give details which are not very private. So let's talk a little bit about premium domain names as well. Since most of the names are already taken, sometimes it is okay to buy a premium name. So you can buy premium names at sedo.com, brandbucket.com, buydomains.com, or if you find a domain name which is already registered and if it is not listed in any of the premium domain name marketplaces, you can try reaching out to them from their Whois email address and try to negotiate a deal with them and purchase the domain name as well. So I have acquired a lot of premium names over the years through these websites, but invest in a premium name only if you think that you can make good use out of it. But even in case you don't make a good use out of it, sometimes you will be able to resell the premium name to someone else, at many times a higher cost than what you have bought. but it requires some level of experience with domain names to find out which domain name might sell for a higher price and which domain names might not. Take the risk only if you are able to take the risk. Like for example, a few years back I wanted to start a personal finance blog and I registered the domain wealthy.in, but I never ended up creating a blog in that because of lack of time. I then sold the domain name wealthy.in to some other company who started a wealth management company on it, and they paid a good price for the domain name. So I ended up making a profit just by buying the domain name, holding it for some time and selling it for a profit. But sometimes you might buy a premium name and you might never be able to sell it as well, so you have to keep that in mind as well. So next action steps. So choose a good domain name for your blog. You can search it at name.com, godaddy.com, or any other place. You can register a domain name at GoDaddy. I have given the discount link below. There is a banner below this video which you click will give you an offer on the domain name. And then you can register 2 or 3 variants and TLDs if you want to protect your brand. Like for example, I have bikerboy.com as well as bikerboy.in, so that I will probably be building my website on bikerboy.in, but then I will have the other TLDs as well, just for the brand name protection, because you don't want someone else to go ahead and purchase the other extensions and try to build a similar brand like yours. So if you have any questions, leave a comment below, and if you need more videos on this topic, let me know what areas need to be covered and I will create more videos. So that's it for domain names, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.